Today we're looking at the Reconstruction Amendments. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. As the American Civil War came to an end in April of 1865, it was clear that radical changes needed to be made to the U.S. Constitution. The primary changes that needed to be made concerned the issue of slavery and trying to guarantee civil rights and liberties to former enslaved African Americans. In 1862, during the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which was an executive order freeing all enslaved people in southern states as a military measure to weaken the Confederate cause. However, as the war was drawing to an end, Lincoln recognized that an amendment to the Constitution would be really the only method of ensuring that slavery would be abolished in the United States forever. This was a daunting task, as if you recall back to Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution that outlines how to amend or change the Constitution, it requires a 2/3 majority vote in Congress, or in other words in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then 3/4 of the states to approve the amendment or to ratify it for the amendment then to be added to the Constitution. In April of 1864, a full year before the Civil War would be over, the Senate passed the amendment to abolish slavery, but then the amendment got held up in the House of Representatives as Democrats refused to vote in favor of it. In late 1864, Lincoln and the Republican leaders in Congress, such as Thaddeus Stevens, pushed hard to get the amendment, the required votes in the House. On January 31st, 1865, the amendment barely received the required votes, but did pass in the House. Now the amendment had to go to the state legislatures, where 27 of the 36 states would need to approve it. In the meantime, the Civil War came to an end, and of course, President Lincoln was assassinated in April of 1865. But on December 6th of 1865, the 13th Amendment was officially ratified, abolishing slavery. As former Confederate states were added back into the Union, it became very clear that many of these states were passing what were called black codes, or laws that heavily discriminated against African Americans, and many of these laws sought to basically keep former enslaved people in a state of slavery. In order to permanently correct these practices, Thaddeus Stevens and the leaders of the radical Republicans in Congress introduced an amendment that would seek to protect the civil liberties of all Americans. By June of 1866, the 14th Amendment passed both houses of Congress with the required majority votes, and then went to the states for approval. Congress then added the stipulation that former Confederate states had to ratify or approve the 13th and 14th Amendments as conditions of rejoining the Union. President Andrew Johnson and Southern states voiced their disapproval of the amendment, but nonetheless, on July 9, 1868, Louisiana and South Carolina became the last two states needed to ratify the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment declared that anyone born in the United States, regardless of their racial background, was automatically a citizen of the United States and the state that they resided in. However, the amendment did exclude Native Americans and those of Asian descent. This amendment completely overthrew the Supreme Court's controversial ruling in the Dred Scott case. The amendment also said that no state could deny the rights of a citizen, so states could not deny any citizen the right to vote. The amendment went further by stating the federal government had the authority to take away a state's representation in Congress if it was found that they were denying citizens, especially former enslaved African Americans, their rights. Now, lastly, the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed the right to vote for all male citizens, regardless of their race or background. At the time, there was still some northern states where African Americans were denied the right to vote. The amendment was passed in Congress in February of 1869, and then went to be ratified by the required number of states, and by February of 1870, the 15th Amendment was ratified by the states. The amendment was celebrated as it opened the door for African American involvement in government. Later in 1870, Hiram Rhodes Revels of Mississippi became the first African American member of Congress when he was elected to the U.S. Senate. Although the amendment was celebrated, there were several loopholes or problems with the 15th Amendment. Many southern states began to place other requirements on voting, such as passing a literacy test or paying a fee or what they called a poll tax in order to vote, among many other strategies. And these again were efforts to deny African Americans their rights. Unfortunately, these practices would last almost 100 years, as it wouldn't be until the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1965 that the U.S. government took action against these discriminatory laws. Furthermore, the 15th Amendment completely ignored the rights of women to vote. Rights were only guaranteed to men, and it wouldn't be until 1920, with the passage of the 19th Amendment, that women would finally receive the right to vote. Although not perfect, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments all took great strides in correcting evils that had been allowed to exist in our nation. And although there are still problems to this day, these amendments were very important steps towards giving equal rights to all Americans. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.